Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another session of CleapCon conference organized by Cleap Technologies. So we founded Cleap Conference in 2021 to raise awareness about cybersecurity in the world. And since that time, we have been annually hosting these conferences and bringing industry leaders together from different domains. And today we have been joined by yet another huge personality among us, and he wants to share his thoughts on security. Pooja, over to you.
Thank you, Shivani. I'm happy to introduce our next speaker, who has over a decade of experience in cybersecurity. His core expertise lies in security operation and incident management, data security, cloud security, and risk management. He's a senior director at Shiprocket. So please welcome Manoj Kumar.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pooja and Shivani, for giving me this an opportunity. And it's totally my pleasure to be part of this forum and share my thoughts. And all of these views are my personal. And I'm before kind of getting into the content and all that stuff, I wanted to share my thoughts that why this topic. I mean, why I kind of choose to kind of talk about cybersecurity strategy for startups, and that's the entire essence for this conversation. And a couple of things, I'm not sure if we have a mic option enabled for our audiences as well, because I prefer to keep it two-way interactive so that it will be little tailored to what they want to kind of achieve out of this conversation, rather than just a one-way, just I came, I spoke and then vanished, rather than keeping it little interactive. So that's the intent. So guys, feel free to stop me. I don't know if you can speak up, feel free to ask questions, paste your questions. I'm not sure, Pooja or Shivani, if you can assist me to read all those questions, because I'll be on my presentation mode. So please feel free to stop me in case you want to kind of want me to talk in detail about something specific or the other. Right?
Sure. When we see the questions coming up, we will notify you and then you can take it up in the session. No worries at all.
Perfect. Shall I share my screen and get going?
Yes.
All right. Okay. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
It is.
Super.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So guys, thank you so much for joining in, and once again, warm welcome. And I would like to kind of extend my thanks to K-Leap group. This initiative is really fantastic. Cybersecurity is a very, very important aspect now in personal, professional, in all segments, because we are adopting digitization, not just in professional world, but also our personal life has changed. And there are various players, there are various service providers, technology providers, OEMs, and all who play key roles. So anyway, cybersecurity has a paramount importance. And thank you for joining in, and I'll get started with the content. All right, so a brief agenda for this next 40-45 minutes discussion or talk. I'll definitely start with an introduction about myself with you today, and that's the reason I have not spoken about myself in last 30 seconds. Then the next one is why startups are of interest for hackers, because that's the first thing people usually think, that am I significant enough for a hacker to be targeted, or can I even get hacked? Do I have something that someone will even think of hacking me? So that persona needs to be changed. Next one is key cybersecurity challenges for startups. That's a very, very interesting topic, because we need to understand that cybersecurity challenges may at a high level looks very, very similar to all of us. Say, for example, the CIA trade, we talks about confidentiality, integrity, availability at a very, very high level. But as you start looking into detail, as you start double clicking into the elements, you will find that even two different companies in the same sector, same industry, may have different challenges because of their technology landscape, because of the way they operate, the geographical presence, so on and so forth. And hence, startup also needs a different level of understanding from a challenge perspective. Then next point is why cybersecurity for startups need a different lens. So I have tried to kind of keep it in a flow that first we need to understand that why startups also need to take it very, very seriously. I'm sure they're taking it, but just I'm trying to bring in some more awareness. And then next, what are the key challenges and why they need a different lens. And then finally, I would like to summarize with my personal thoughts on what they should consider when it comes to defining or designing or drafting their cybersecurity strategy, posture, or roadmap or plan, whatever you want to call it. And then finally, I would like to kind of take up questions if time permits. And then that's all about this next 45 minutes of time. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix my light. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so with you today, I am Manoj Kumar, briefly introduced already. I worked for Shiprocket and I head information security function for Shiprocket. I bring in over a decade of experience in cybersecurity. Before that, I have done my engineering and my master's in information security. And that's how I landed my career in cybersec. I have worked in last 10, 11 years of experience. I have worked half of my life in Big Fours, where I have done advisory, I have done implementation, I have worked as consultant to various clients, sector, and various geographical regions. Rest of the half of my career I have spent with tech giants, and I've also worked with one of the leading telco in India, and that was again a greenfield thing. So I think I have been into companies who started as a greenfield and now they have become one of the India's leading or that particular country's leading thing. So I have seen a kind of startup or a growth journey for a from a greenfield to an enterprise versus now. I mean, I have also assisted some of the startups in their journey, and right now I am definitely working for a startup. So I think I bring certain level of understanding and I have certain level of, I would say, viewpoint, and that's the reason I am sharing my thoughts here. As I already spoke about, I have worked with clients across startups, telcos, IT, BFSI, and government in this entire 10 years of career. My core expertise lies in architecting and implementing security solutions for on-prem, for cloud, both threat hunting, security operations, data security, and risk and compliance. Happy to be here. And once again, thank you, Clip team, for having me here. Now, the most important slide, why startups are of paramount interest for hackers, right? Because, I mean, on one side, you can think of there are big companies, there are so and so forth. So why startups? And I'm sure those who are attending this conference would have heard about a term called APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, which talks about attacking in a various stages or various layers, or we also call it as kill chain or whatever. I mean, one example which we all know where APT started as a term was Lockheed Martin, where one particular company was hacked or breached to target the actual end mile company. And that's why startups become very, very important, because not just what they do, but how they add value to their clients, right? So I have kind of listed some 6 key points. There might be more, but yeah, for example, the first one is startups have immense data. It can be PII, it can be credit card, it can be your customer data, so on and so forth. On top of that, startups has their own ISPs, has their own intellectual properties. I mean, every startup has a unique concept. They come up with a thought and they convert that idea to reality. And in that journey of converting a thought process to a reality, there's a lot of unique thing that they do, right? For example, two same startup may have their own ways to achieve the same thing, right? In the same sector, same industry. So every startup has their own data pointers. Every startup, they have their own intellectual properties. And I mean, startup journey, we all know there are competitors. They are always on a very, I would say, fast moving wheel, because time is the key. If they are not able to launch that particular feature, that particular functionality in the due time, maybe their competitor may come up faster than them, right? So the time is of essence, and how they achieve is of essence. Second thing is that any startup, their journey starts with typically few people come together with the idea, with a thought. They spend some time, they build a prototype, they take it to market, they take it to investors, they socialize it, and then they basically productize that to a service, to a solution, or so and so forth. In the entire scheme of thing, they always thought, they always think that how I can take this product, how I can take this feature to market. Because first of all, startup needs that market presence, adoption of client, and that's where they're always in the rush of launching new feature, functionality, so on and so forth. And in that entire piece of thing, cybersecurity takes a backstage. They always feel, let me first develop this module, let me make this go live, and then parallelly I can do security testing while the game is changing. But yeah, that's how the typical mindset of startup people are in general, I'm talking about, right? Then lack of stringent security controls, because they are not initially, not many startups get a very healthy funding in the beginning. So what they do, they start with, say, leveraging open source technologies. They start leveraging or building some of the small utilities for various features, functionalities. And in the entire scheme of thing, they end up having, say, n number of solutions stitched together to achieve a functionality, which was not really looked upon from a configuration perspective, which was not typically looked upon from a security review perspective. And that's where, if you see from a security controls perspective, it looked like a little lean and thin when it comes to the effectiveness of cybersecurity controls. That's where lack of stringent security controls. Next point is very important. Startups can be the launch pad for targeted attack. It is not, I mean, you might not be the best or the last interest for a hacker. They just want to use you to reach to your clients. If, for example, if I'm a service-based startup and I'm providing people as a service, say, for example, I have my folks working for a tech giant using my own laptops. In that case, attacker may just need access to my laptop so that the moment my people, my staff who is going to connect to that corporate account or the corporate network, they will just use my laptop to launch the attack to actual network of the client. They don't want to hack me. They actually want to use me to hack the end victim, right? So it is not about being hacked. It is about how you can be leveraged to kind of hack the last mile victim. Next one is digital adoption and lack of security controls. Same thing. If you see any startup journey, most of them, they typically start with a cloud first approach because scalable, modular, cost effective, pay as you go, subscription based, so on and so forth, rather than if you see any of the enterprise, they are in-house heavy, on-prem heavy, they have very controlled, very secure environment, wherein most of the startups start with cloud first. And even the tool selection is largely open source, easy to use, kind of say free to use sort of thing to kind of have a very, very cost effective proposition. And they don't realize that when they slipped from being a startup to a very, very mature company, and they are still on the similar tech landscape at the back end. And the last and not least is the attack surface. Most of the startups, they have their apps, they have their web application, mobile application, and that increases the attack surface. If you see a typical bank has a attack surface only to their customers to a certain extent. I mean, minus DDoS and all that stuff. Only who are the subscribers or only who are the users, they can access that app. But most of these things, say for example, a food delivery app or a vehicle booking app and all that stuff, it's open to all, you know. So basically, even a hacker can download your application and can do a reverse engineering, can do what and whatnot, because that is accessible to everyone on public internet. So they have a very, very big attack surface. So I think these are some key pointers which makes any hacker think of leveraging or attacking a startup to kind of meet their end objective. All right. Moving next. What are the key cybersecurity challenges for startups? I mean, while we all know that cybersecurity is important, we all know that we need to take care of it very, very, I would say, in a strategic manner. We know that, I mean, there should be certain controls. There are various materials on internet saying NIST has their own guidelines, CIS has their own guidelines, and so on and so forth. But then think from a startup perspective, why even they know all that stuff, why they are not able to implement those controls, why they are not able to reach to that maturity of from a security perspective, right? So again, I have listed some key points. It's not just limited, but these are my thoughts. First of all, limited budget. I mean, we all know startups start from an idea, get certain level of funding, then they bring in more people, they put most of their efforts in productizing that idea, making the feature available to folk so that they can grow, and they can make revenue from the thought, from that idea. And that's where whenever they get some budget, they have various pockets already where they need to invest. It can be your technology landscape, it can be your revamping your tech, and so on and so forth. Because, for example, when you launched, you only had say 500 or 5,000 users, but now when you grow, you have now 50,000 customers. You also need to make sure that I cannot invest only in cybersecurity. I also need to scale up my solution, my infrastructure, and so on and so forth. I need to increase my headcount. I need to think from a compliance perspective. I need to have a proper finance controller in my place. So budgeting is always a key, and that needs to be looked at very, very, I would say, differently. Next one is adoption of emerging technologies. As I said, they are very, very digital native. They always look for the, I would say, key emerging technologies to fix problems. They don't have a conventional mindset that, okay, I'll go to all the best known giants, which is in industry since 20, 30 years. They always look for what's new in market, what's innovative in market, so that they can plug in and they can kind of get the best of it. Next one is definitely increased phishing or social engineering attack. This is again not just from a startup perspective, but why this one I have mentioned here out of all the attack types is in startups, people are very focused. They always come with, say, a product mindset. They always come with, say, they are always running on building something new and all that stuff. In that, what happens is their ecosystem is very, very diverse. Say, for example, a small startup has a supplier who is very, very small company, and they use Gmail as a official communication, right? So it becomes difficult if I'm an employee of a startup. It's very difficult for me to identify two emails from Gmail saying this looks phishing and this looks legitimate, right? So the first response is click on it, have a look, then we'll see. Oh, by the time they realize, oh, this was not relevant to me, it's already gone. The attachment is in your system. You've already clicked on the link. So the entire ecosystem starts with a very, very small components. Their third parties are smaller than the startup, right? And that's where it's very, very difficult for them to differentiate or identify this looks legit or this looks malicious. And attackers are very smart. They craft the phishing emails. They typically try to kind of fool people by sending fake emails on behalf of their CEO saying, masquerading the mail ID saying, I am your CEO, I'm in urgent call, I'm in urgent meeting, can you please do this to me? And obviously a very, very junior folk will get frightened saying, oh, my CEO is asking this, let me first send this document, right? Without even taking a moment to think about, is he really asking this to me? Shall I pick up my phone and call him or call her and ask, hey, you really need this information? Have you sent me this email? So they try to kind of take advantage of all such moments. Then the next point is product or feature first mindset. And that's already fine because they are in the rush to productize the idea so that they can take it to next level of funding. They can get more, say, revenue. They can get better customer because they are in a very, very competitive market. You see any segment. I was surprised recently. I was just looking for a few companies who does that, decoration at home for a birthday or any other party. I was surprised. There were so many companies in market. I was like, oh my God, life has become so easy because of these startups, right? And think for them, they can't just say, no, I need to first have Active Directory in place. I need to have a EDR in place. They are a very small company, right? But they are providing services, they are value adding. So any startup has their unique thought and they want to kind of productize that, and that's fine. Next one is, thanks to COVID, hybrid ecosystem. Most of the startups now working remotely, some of the startups are operating from a shared, say, for example, infrastructure. They don't have a fixed office. They don't have a fixed place. They don't have a very managed network. Some of these are also even allowing BYOD. So it's very hybrid, few people using their own system, making consistent security controls on a personal system versus a corporate managed system. It's very different. So the entire ecosystem is very hybrid, and it actually limits our visibility. It limits the security team or the technology team to kind of have a consistent security approach for all the systems, right? For example, if I'm working from a coffee shop versus I am working from a office network, the threat landscape changes, right? And the last and not least is shadow IT. We all know this term. This is a persistent problem for tech enterprises, giant companies, and even startups. Now, why for startups? Because not every startup has a very, very, I would say, devised managed culture from day one. They tend to give admin access to most of the developers because they need it. They don't have, say, a very granular control at a directory level or, say, at a patch management level. What they do, okay, they give one laptop, internet is there, you have admin access, and then you are free to do whatever you want. In the entire scheme of thing, it's very easy for them to fall prey to any shadow IT. They can install a software which look like legit, but is actually a malicious one. So these are some of the things which is very particular, which is very unique from a startup challenge perspective. Again, these are applicable, very, very much applicable to tech giants as well, but startups these are very, very unique. Next one is why. Okay, now, so we talked about why a hacker should hack it. We talked about why cybersecurity is a problem for startups. Then what should be considered when you are drafting a strategy for a startup from a cybersecurity perspective? Even if, say, for example, even if few startups have good money, they have good funding, they have good revenue, what limits them from meeting the same level of control as any other mature, any other enterprise company? Say, for example, If there is a OEM who is top in the Gartner quadrant, leader, etc., etc. If a startup who has, say, for example, 50 people strength or say 100 people strength, the moment they approach that company saying, hey, you know what, I know that your solution is amazing, we want to implement your solution. The problem comes, they say, my minimum license starts with 300 people. You have to pay, irrespective of you using 50, you're using 70, you have to pay a bracket of 300 people. That makes the solution very, very costly. And this is true for almost all, I would say, big OEMs these days. You see the licensing model, and I think they have learned from it. They are changing their licensing model. They are also now going on SaaS-based platforms, so that there will not be much of dependency from a on-prem infrastructure or a fixed infrastructure cost perspective. But that's a reality that even if a startup wants to look up to a OEM to kind of have them or implement them into the environment, they becomes very, very tiny. That is one. Second, if you see from the OEM perspective, for OEMs, the premium license, the support and all that stuff, I mean, one company who has, say, 30,000 users versus another startup which has 50 people company, they will definitely give more priority to those tech giants, right? Because they have their better consumption, they have all the premium licenses, subscriptions, so on and so forth. So I think first thing is, even if some startups want to kind of have them implement them in the environment, it limits them by their licensing criteria and so on and so forth. Next one is, by the time startups realize that cybersecurity needs to be kind of looked upon, they are already live. They are already in market. They are already being used. Now, if they want to adopt or if they want to implement some control, they need to make sure that their current production or their current operation should not get impacted. The customer experience should not get impacted. And that's where the downtime, basically that case, this cascades to you don't get enough time to plan, because by the time you're planning, your cybersecurity landscape will again change. By the time you will actually think of implementing it, the threat vector has already changed, right? So you need to find solution which is plug and play, which will not impact the ongoing business, which will impact the business, which will not impact the business continuity. And it should be very, very seamless. So you need to find solutions which is plug and play, and think of that it has to be very, very fast. Next one is, as I said, cost-effective solution, which basically cascades to the first point, saying they have a budget constraint and they need to think of what should go first. Say, for example, we all know there are various security controls only for endpoints. There are various security controls for network, right? For example, there is firewall, there is IPS, there is anti-APT, there is deception, so on and so forth. But does all of them are important for us? Probably the answer is no. Can we implement all of them? Probably the answer may be no, because some of these solutions were designed for on-prem. Some of these solutions were not designed for cloud native. So there are different solutions for that, and they need to look from a costing, and they need to prioritize based on their cost. Say, for example, this quarter, if I have to choose between A, B, and C, which one should I select? So they need to be a very cautious decision that what should fit them at this point in time. Next one is scalable and modular. Every startup intends, or at least every startup has the thought that they want to become big one day, right? Say, for example, they started with 10 people or 50 people today. They definitely look forward to have 1,000 people or 2,000 people company someday. So you need to have a solution selection in a way that if tomorrow you have to grow organically, or if tomorrow you have to grow inorganically, how you're going to scale up, or how you're going to have a modular approach to ensure that your security also ramps up with your digital transformation or your upscaling of the entire company portfolio. Next one is digital native. As I said, most of the startup are cloud native. Most of the startup look for tools and an automation based approach or strategy rather than trying the typical conventional method. And that's where having a digital first or a solution which closely integrates with most of these new age solution becomes the key. Otherwise, even if you implement that solution, the interoperability, the integration with your various new age or new era solution might limit the efficiency or efficacy of the solution. And the last and the not least one is compliance requirements. While most of the startups may not have a direct compliance requirement, may have very few compliance requirements, but they are in a position where they have to inherit the compliance requirement from their clients. Say, for example, a startup who is providing a services to defense, or for example, a startup who is providing a services to health company, health sector, they may have to think from a HIPAA perspective. If a startup who is providing, say, a certain level of value add or support or services to a BFSI sector, they need to think from, in India, they need to think from RBI guidelines. They need to think from PCI DSS compliance perspective. So even if the company altogether on their own may not directly into BFSI sector or into health and sector, but their client is in that domain, and that's where they have to sign a contract which is back to back saying my compliance obligations are ABC. You also need to do that, and that becomes very, very difficult because A, you are battling on the costing. B, now you are bound to kind of comply with various regulatory requirements. So that's again a very, very unique challenge. I would like to take a kind of pause to understand. Do we have any questions from anyone?
Yes, there are a few questions in the lineup. Would you like to take them now?
Sure.
Okay, so there is one question. When should cybersecurity be adopted? In what stage it should enter the company?
Sure. I think the answer which all of us know is as early as possible. But then the reality is we know that by the moment we realize that, okay, we need to have cybersecurity posture, we already gone live. We already have some 1,000 to lakhs customers, subscribers, so on and so forth. And that's why it is very important that always have a secure by design thought process. Even if, say, for example, and that is also been now termed as left shift approach. So even if you are thinking about an idea, say, for example, 3 of your friends sitting together discussing about idea, let's do a startup. Yeah, I'm thinking of this idea. Think from security right then there. But even if, say, for example, you have missed the bus, my friend, it's not late. The moment you realize, okay, we are in market, we are a company, we're a product, start thinking about security right from there.
Absolutely. And we have one more question. I guess you have taken it up, but still I go ahead with the question. It says, due to less funding in initial phase, security is less thought of unless there is a threat or anything happens. Yes. What minimum requirement should one follow at least to keep in security check?
Absolutely. So I think that's a very, very good question. And I would like to kind of thank to the individual who has asked this question, because that's very, very important. So I think, yes, you rightly said, I mean, I have already touched upon that security is always difference in depth concept. I mean, for example, if you see at a network layer, almost each of these components share 20% feature or functionalities among themselves. Say, for example, even for endpoints, say we have antivirus, say we have HIPS, we have EDRs, and so on and so forth, right? So all of these share some of the functionality and features. So the approach should be look for controls which is not cost heavy. Say, for example, hardening of my endpoints or hardening of my server does not require much of cost. All it takes is do a baseline security configuration, do one-time vulnerability assessment of your golden image, and make sure that image is hardened, image is secure, and you should only consider that image when you are provisioning an endpoint or a server. So hardening is very, very cost effective, and it's very important. Second thing, make sure that you have a very granular view of your assets. Maintain a very robust asset inventory. Again, I'm not suggesting any tool, but at least a simple approach of having an Excel sheet shared on a shared drive with the respective IT teams and other application or other stakeholders of the company. Make sure that any server that goes live has an entry in your asset inventory. Any endpoint being distributed to the end company, end employee, you should have an entry there. Couple of things, for example, objective of the server, who is the owner of the server, from an application perspective, what OS it runs, what softwares, what utilities it is running. Make a list of it and keep an eye on any open vulnerabilities. For example, if I'm using a X version of particular OS, I don't want to take a name, and if I am seeing an advisory that, okay, there is a vulnerability in that particular OS, make sure that you go and patch it. So keep an eye on your asset inventory. Do I would say near real-time patching, or at least as and when you get a update, do a patching on N-1 version, at least from a stability perspective. That's the second thing. Maintain basic hygiene. For example, if someone asks for an admin privilege, right? Think twice. Do we need to give admin right to this particular person? Say, for example, on cloud, do we need to use root account to do all such of work? No, root is very, very important. Do not share root credentials. Do not use root account to kind of even do basic installation. Create users, give them the right level of access, and maintain that. So I think these 3-4 things, basic hygiene, which I have already mentioned in the coming next slide, but these comes for free. These just needs a adoption or a mindset that, okay, I have to follow this. These needs to be part of your habit. So I think these should be the basics to start. And if I were to talk about one level up, I think your endpoint security, it can be a EDR, it can be antivirus, choice of selection is yours. And second is your cloud, because everything is on cloud, your code is on cloud, your IP is on cloud. So I think cloud security, again, there are various layers for that. And the third thing is that how you connect your endpoint to your cloud. It can be via VPN, it can be via CASB. Depending on your need and your use case, you can find the right solution. But at least make sure that your endpoint and your gateway, I mean your servers are secure, and then there is a secure connectivity. So I think first layer, basic hygiene. Second layer is this. These are the bare minimum that needs to be done for sure. I mean, on top of that, definitely now there are certain regulatory requirements from certain and all that needs to be covered. But yeah, at least these are the basics to start with. I hope that answered.
Yes, it was wonderful. Actually, startups do struggle in the initial phases in this domain because team strength is low. IT team has not been fully set up. So I think the bare minimum that you have talked about is something that startup can adopt. As we also being startup, we also put in that kind of focus into our security, because being a security company, security comes at the forefront.
Absolutely.
So I think wonderfully put across.
Sure.
And there is one more question. I think you have answered this in the last question. What kind of security services are important for startups? I think this has been included in the last question that you just answered.
Sure. Okay. So moving next, and this is my last slide as well, points to consider. And I think some folks asked question on similar line as well. So the first and most important thing is know your risk, compliance, and threat, because this is very important. Say, for example, I am a company who provides people as a service. So for me, at max is at risk is the endpoint in case my client want my folks to use my company provided laptop. So I think making sure that all the laptops, all the endpoints which they are using to connect to the client network is fully secured, has all the bolts and controls in place, so that, because that's the only thing that can be, I would say, misused, right? Similarly, if I'm a company who provides, say, for example, utility as a service, I have very small products, which basically integrates as a middleware to kind of integrate between two different components. So I think in that scenario, API security or the security of my utility or my product becomes very, very important, because that is being leveraged by big giants to kind of achieve certain use case in the industry, in the environment. And if my software, if my code is kind of hacked or kind of leveraged, that can do blunder. We already know some of the use cases in past. SolarWinds attack was one such thing. Where one software was basically misused to kind of do a bigger attack. So understand your risk, understand what you play in the entire bigger scheme of thing, and then understand your risk, and then understand what are the compliance that you need to meet with, and then your threats. Second thing is maintain comprehensive hardware and software inventory. I already spoke about it. Maintaining a hardware inventory, we all know why maintaining a software inventory is very important, because A, shadow IT. B, we don't know when we slip in a moment that what tool we're using is already vulnerable. Say, for example, recently we read about few solutions where there is an app which is used by developers to write code that has some inherited vulnerabilities which can be exploited. There was a tool which is used to take remote desktop connection that can be leveraged, that can be kind of misused by attacker to kind of gain remote access, right? So make sure what softwares you use, because once you have a view, only then you can control it. It is as simple as that. A car without a speedometer is very dangerous, because you never know what speed you are clocking in, right? Say, for example, if the road safety says speed limit is 80, but if you can't see at what speed you're driving at this moment, you can't take a call, you can't put brake, you can't accelerate. That's why having a visibility is very important. Know what you use in hardware, know what you use in software, make sure any vulnerabilities is being taken care, make sure you have subscribed to advisories which will give you a view that you can know that what software you're using, is there any open vulnerabilities around that, and if there is, yes, then do a patching and needful to kind of make sure that you're secure. Third point, already spoke about, keep the basics correct, because these are basic hygiene. These will not cost you much. Make sure that all your infrastructure is hardened. Make sure you have patched your things. Make sure your access controlled. Make sure that you are not over permitting users. Make sure that you have configurations at a bare minimum standard required for security. Make sure that you have a perimeter secure. It can be via firewall, it can be via WAF. Identify your risk and then accordingly put your controls in place and make sure that those are at least rightly done. Next one is draft roadmap aligned with business goal, because startups are evolving, they evolve with time. If you have a view, say for example, 6 months down the line, I'm going to launch 2 more products. Probably this is the right time where you should get involved with your product team, understand what they're doing, make sure that they understand secure by design. They make sure that they understand privacy by design. At the ideation phase itself, tell them that security is important, know the risk, so that when they are designing, when they're building that solution, or probably the capability, they will make sure that security is being considered from day zero. So it's very important to understand the roadmap. Similarly, say for example, if a company, they have a roadmap of doing acquisition with XYZ company, make sure that your solutions are scalable and modular, so that tomorrow, once you grow inorganically, you will have a consistent approach across your companies and your group companies. Next one is robust security awareness program. As I said, everyone individually has to kind of interact with various service providers, third parties, contractors, vendors, so on and so forth. And it is very easy these days to slip into, say, phishing, wishing kind of thing. So make sure that everyone in the company understands about cybersecurity, knows what are the basic hygiene and basic, I would say, things to be considered. And for that, I think security awareness plays a very, very important role. Make sure these are binded by the KPIs or the KRAs of every individual. Make sure you run a periodic program for cybersecurity awareness. If possible, try to draft some content based on the roles. Say, for example, a developer need to understand security from an application security perspective. Say, for example, a finance guy, or say, for example, a marketing guy need to understand security from data sharing or data leak perspective, that what you're sharing with the client, so on and so forth. So everyone need to understand in their role, in their capacity, how cybersecurity is going to play important role and how they can add value from a cybersecurity perspective. And next one is keep an eye on license violation. That's very, very important. And I specifically want to talk about on this one for a few minutes. That's why I kept here, not discussed before. What startups does is they try to leverage the open source thing. They don't know when they kind of started commercializing something which is built actually on open source, where the open source has asked that you will not resell those things, right? So understand that what you are leveraging, you are not commercializing it. There should not be any legal, I would say, challenges around that. Second thing, make sure that what you have procured from a solution perspective, from license perspective, right? From your day-to-day utility perspective, make sure that you are meeting the license criteria. You are not violating any of those, because these are very minuscule things. We don't even realize, we don't even understand, but once get caught, there are severe penalties, there are severe, I would say, reputational threat, and so on and so forth. So it's very important. And that again ties back to your point number 2. Make sure that you have a very consistent software inventory, and whatever you're using, if it is meant to be not commercialized, make sure you're not doing it. Make sure not you're abusing any licensing terms of any of the solution that you're using. So these are some of the pointers which everyone should consider when they are defining or designing their strategy especially for startups. Any more questions? Otherwise, I am done with content, and I wanted to kind of keep 5 minutes open for any discussion.
Thank you, Manoj. We do not have any questions as of now. And I believe this is the end of our talk. And I would really want to thank you for taking time out and sharing your views and thoughts on cybersecurity, as it is a burning topic right now. And, with the advent of so much of new technologies coming in, and, and startups and SMBs and larger companies, all of us are in sweet spot. And I think very insightful session. Even I have gained so much from it, and thank you for your thoughts on it. I believe those who will watch this session after this has been over on YouTube, they will definitely want to reach out to you and seek or maybe talk about over a coffee also. So, thank you, Manoj, and I will definitely see you next year as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shivani, Pooja, and the entire team. And my coordinates are here, my mail ID and my LinkedIn. Happy to exchange emails or thoughts, or if I can be of any other, say, guidance, mentorship, and all that stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj.
Thank you.